Okay. So, hi, good afternoon, good evening. Ishikant, can you start?
Speaker to talk about the clinical perspective. Our fourth speaker is a senior doctor, Dr. P.C. Manoria. He is Director, Manoria Heart Critical Care Hospital, Bhopal. He is former professor and head of Department Cardiology, GMC, Bhopal. He is past president, CSI, API, ICP, and past dean, ICP and ICMU. He has been awarded Lifetime Achievement Award at WCCPC. He has edited many books and has various publications to his honor. Dr. P.C. Manoria, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. For the next 15 minutes, I'll be talking on this interesting topic, myocardial viability, clinical perspectives. The last couple of years has witnessed spectacular advances in the field of myocardial viability, both in terms of enhanced understanding and in the availability of a panoply of imaging techniques, which has enabled us to predict recovery of contractile function following myocardial revascularization. Myocardial viability is an essential component of evaluation of ischemic heart disease with LV dysfunction. What are our goals of viability assessment in chronic ischemic heart disease with left ventricular dysfunction? The first goal is identification of patients that would benefit from revascularization. Second, prediction of recovery of regional or global LV function after revascularization. And in patients with advanced CHF, viability helps us to decide the strategy of management. If there is viability, the patient is submitted to revascularization. If there is no viability, he is advised LVAD or cardiac transplantation. The criteria of myocardial viability has also undergone several changes during the last couple of years. The presence of Q wave, which was considered a gold standard for myocardial necrosis, is no longer true. Substantial myocardial viability can exist in patients with Q waves on the electrocardiogram. Likewise, the presence of a persistent wall motion abnormality is no longer considered a sign of dead myocardium. Viable myocardium may exist in these segments. Akinetic myocardium also, there could be substantial viability, and in patients with chronic total occlusion, viability must always be tested because many of these patients may have a viable myocardium and may benefit from revascularization procedures. Now, whenever we see a dysfunctional myocardium, our first aim is to decide whether the myocardium is dead or alive. The criteria for a dead myocardium is that there is no response to stress dopamine echo testing, no LG enhancement on CMR, no glucose uptake on an FDG PET, and no uptake of radio nuclide transfer. And obviously, if there is dead myocardium, that patient does not require any revascularization. Now, a live myocardium has three subsets. The most important subset is hibernating myocardium. Hibernating myocardium implies chronic, persistent, impaired contractile function of chronic ischemic myocardium, which has downregulated its energy requirement for survival and shows recovery after myocardial revascularization. The ischemic myocardium is also a live myocardium, and such patients should be submitted for revascularization. The third subset of myocardial dysfunction is stunned myocardium, and stunned myocardium implies prolonged but temporary dysfunction of viable myocardium, previously ischemic myocardium saved by reperfusion. Stunning occurs due to accumulation of oxygen-free radicals and calcium overload, and this dysfunction may persist for hours to 6 weeks post-insult. And this is seen after reperfusion in patients with acute myocardial infarction or unstable angina or following PTCA or CABG. What is very important to remember regarding stunned myocardium is that the contractility of stunned myocardium can be enhanced by inotropic agents if the patient is having hemodynamic deterioration. And obviously, this requires no revascularization. Now, in our day-to-day practice, how do we suspect that the patient in question is having a viable myocardium and he should be subjected to a viability test? If a patient of congestive heart failure is angina, this is a sign of viability. In a patient of ischemic cardiomyopathy, if there are no Q waves, this is also a sign of viability and patient should be advised viability testing. Likewise, inducible ischemia on any score, what is angina during stress testing, wall motion abnormality during stress dopamine echo, or perfusion defect on radionuclide imaging, all are signs of viability. Systolic thickening of the myocardium, say on an echocardiogram, is a sure sign of viability, and an akinetic segment can also have myocardial viability. And contractile reserve is seen on an echocardiogram. This shows the varial response of the myocardium to stress dopamine echo. Right on the top, you can see stunned myocardium. As the dopamine dose is increased, there's increase in contractility and further increase in contractility with the peak dose. In patients with hyperkinetic myocardium, when the dopamine is administered, there's increase in contractility with low dose, and with higher dose, the contractility again decreases, and this is known as biphasic response. Both this hyperkinetic myocardium has good response to revascularization. Then we have number 3, ischemic myocardium. As you give dopamine, the contractility increases, but later on with the high dose, the contractility decreases. This also responds to myocardial revascularization. And the subset of scar tissue, that is, it will not have any change on stress dopamine echo and does not require any treatment. Now, this is a meta-analysis of myocardial viability and passes on great messages. If you have a viable myocardium, revascularization must be taken as the treatment of choice. But if you don't revascularize this patient, it is associated with very high mortality. The mortality 1 year may be as high as 16% compared to 3.2% if the patient is revascularized. On the other hand, if you have a non-viable myocardium and if you revascularize by mistake, the mortality is more, about 7.7% compared to the medical treatment group where the mortality is only 6.2%. Now we have a panoply of tests for myocardial viability, as you can see on the screen: stress dopamine echo, specthallium, FDG PET, CMR, late gadolinium enhancement, and myocardial contrast echo. Now the big issue is which test should be performed for viability imaging. Now it's important to remember that stress dopamine has a very high specificity, but the problem with stress dopamine echo is that it is highly operator dependent. FDG PET and LGE CMR are very good modalities. So far as the choice of test is concerned, it depends on the familiarity of the test of the operator and the availability of the test. So whatever test is available and what the cardiologist is familiar with, he can subject any of these tests, that is either a stress dopamine or a LGE CMR or an FDG PET. Does the choice of test also determine the results of viability? Yes, here you can see among segments which were classified as non-viable in Thallium studies on the top, when FDG PET was performed, 23 to 25% are classified as viable FDG PET. Now this is the story of a 40-year-old man with shortness of breath, cardiomegaly, S3, poor progression of airway with the precordial leads, cardiomegaly on a skygram, a large akinetic area involving the enteroapical wall. The LV was dilated, ejection fraction was 38%. On an angiogram, the LAD was totally occluded. Such patients must always be tested for myocardial viability, and as you can see, this patient with viability was tested. He had a large viable area in the enteroapical wall, and when we were subjected to revascularization, there's dramatic improvement in the ejection fraction, and he went back to his work. So the message is, in patients with chronic total occlusion, viability tests should be performed, and if viability is present, patient should be submitted to revascularization. It should not be taken for granted that the patient has developed chronic total occlusion. There will be no viability in the territory supplied by the vessel. And this is a very interesting analysis from LG CMR, which very clearly shows that depending on the transmural extent of infarction, if the segment has less than 25% TEI, improvement at 5 months will occur and further improvement will occur at 3 years. If the transmural extent of infarction is 25 to 75%, there's no improvement at 3 months, improvement may occur at 3 years. And if the transmural extent of infarction is more than 75%, there is usually no improvement. Now, this is a common scenario. Patients of acute myocardial infarction is given lytic therapy, his arteries open up, and there is a tight residual stenosis. Whether angioplasty should be performed or not. Now, if the patient has a single vessel disease and has angina, and then the patient can be subject to PTCA state of. But if there is no unequivocal evidence of ischemia, viability tests must be done before the patient is taken for a PTCA. Likewise, in patients whom PTCA or bypass surgery has been done, the mere presence of an open artery should not be taken as a guarantee that myocardial viability has been achieved. Viability test must be done before revascularization and after revascularization. If the viability is improved after revascularization, then only we can interpret that the revascularization procedure has been successful. The next issue is how much viability is enough to anticipate improvement following revascularization. Now, there are various criteria. On a dobutamine stress echo, at least 3 to 5 myocardial segments should show viability. On a SPECT thallium, 15 to 20% of myocardial mass should have viability. On an FDG PET, 25% of perfusion mismatch should be present. And LG CMR, if the transmural extent of infarction is less than 25%, there are good chances of recovery. Between 25 to 75%, less chance of recovery, and the recovery is poor if the transmural extent of infarction is more than 75%. The big issue is functional improvement the best standard of truth? This is usually believed, but under certain circumstances there can be problems. For example, a patient has a viable myocardium, he has been advised revascularization, but if the revascularization has not been complete, the patient may not recover his contractile fraction. So this should always be seen. The second is recurrent events can occur between the revascularization and the follow-up imaging. The contractile function does not immediately recover following revascularization. And thirdly, as we have discussed, timing of optimal follow-up imaging is also an important determinant whether functional improvement following revascularization will be observed. And on occasion, myocardial dysfunction may not be due to coronary hypoperfusion, and it might have been misinterpreted. Now, this is the famous STITCH trial and the extension study STITCHES, and this tried to assess whether myocardial viability is important in survival in ischemic left ventricular dysfunction. Now, this is the only subset of myocardial viability. About 1,200 patients in this trial, 618 were tested for viability, and 601 patients had viable myocardium. The remaining 611 viability test was not performed. And among those whose viability test was performed, 321 had a SPECT, 130 had dobutamine echo, and 150 had both the tests. And out of these 601 patients, 487 were found to have viable myocardium and 114 non-viable. You can see the number of non-viable group was small, and patient whose myocardial viability was not tested, about 611 patients. Half of the patients in each group were subjected to medical treatment alone, and the remaining half to CABG plus medical treatment. SPECT and SPECT thallium and dobutamine stress echo was utilized to test the myocardial viability. The primary endpoint of the study was all-cause mortality. Secondary endpoint was mortality plus CV hospitalization and CV mortality. Now, as you can see, there was no statistical significant difference in all-cause mortality, whether the patient has myocardial viability or no myocardial viability. And STITCH trial showed serious implications. Firstly, in patients with CAD and LV dysfunction, assessment of myocardial viability does not identify patients who will have the greatest survival benefit from adding CABG to optimum medical therapy, thereby negating the conventional concept that myocardial viability predicts improvement in LV ejection fraction and increased survival after revascularization. Secondly, improvement in left ventricular ejection fraction following CABG is more likely to occur in patients with myocardial viability, but was also noticed in patients without CABG. LV ejection fraction, it showed, is not an important mechanism for long-term survival of patients treated medically or by CABG. But the trial had lots of limitation. Myocardial viability data was available only in 15% of the patient, and non-viable myocardium group only had a small number of patients, 114 patients, and viability testing was done only by SPECT and dobutamine and not by PET or cardiac MRI, which are now the standard and advanced techniques for myocardial viability. And as you can see, which I have already shown, it is the choice of the test for myocardial viability which also matters. You can see on the top portion of the slide, myocardial viability tested by SPECT and then again tested by FDG, 23 to 25% of segments which were declared non-viable on SYSTEMI SPECT were declared viable by FDG PET. Now in the COVID era, myocardial viability issues, what are these issues? In COVID era, the causes of cardiac involvement are multifaceted. The heart may be involved by myocarditis, cytokine storm, stress cardiomyopathy, acute coronary syndrome type 2 is more common in type 1, and pulmonary embolism. And as you can see, as the cardiac involvement in COVID is multifaceted, so evaluation of myocardial viability in patients of ACS with LVD is not valid because the segments of the myocardium supplied by coronary artery may be affected by other pathologies as well besides coronary artery disease. And if you want to prevent COVID in this era, you have to follow this slide, which shows that you have to avoid men. M stands for mouth, E for eyes, N for nose. You should avoid touching these parts, and you have to follow women, which means W stands for wash your hands, O, obey physical distancing, M, mask compulsory, E, eat right and exercise, and no, N stands for no unnecessary tool. So all those areas where COVID is prevalent, they should follow these instructions. And therefore, what are the take-home messages? Myocardial viability is an integral part of evaluation of CAD. It identifies patients who would benefit from revascularization. It is a predictor of recovery of contractile function of ventricles. In advanced heart failure due to multivessel disease, it helps in deciding whether the patient would be benefited by revascularization or he has to be subjected to LVAD or transplantation. Stress dobutamine echo is a good test with high specificity, but is highly operator dependent. PET, CT, and LGCMR are more reliable method to assess myocardial viability than SPECT. And the questions about myocardial which were raised in the STITCH trial, but the consensus is myocardial viability is still viable because STITCH trial has lots of limitations. Thank you very much for your kind attention.